Redfall 30 FPS. Series S, it runs at in quality mode at 1440p 30. So performance mode is coming later. Okay, so that's what you're upset about, is no performance mode. I get that. I thought it was just gonna be like, yeah, there's a quality mode and it's 30 FPS at quality mode. And I was like, lay up, like dry up, guys. What are you talking about? You're throwing a fit over that. But wow, they are not bringing performance mode on day one. That's an oopsie. That's an oopsie. At least for nowadays. I don't know if Xbox players will really care, but I don't know. I'm interested in what Maddie says about this. I don't know. Mr. Maddie. Oh, also Carrick. While I don't know anyone surprised by this after seeing the footage and the other content, 60 FPS mode is warranted for this game and the action they're pushing. The Redfall's PR hits keep coming. Yeah, for real. Oh, well, yeah, his username's G27 status. That's, this is rough, man. This is rough. Because, again, a lot of this comes down to what current expectations are. The modern expectations are that there's at least a 60 FPS mode. At least. I meant, do you want me to install Destiny again? Yeah, Rocky, I assumed you would have still had it. But yeah, I have Destiny 2 installed and I'm trying to play it in my spare time, but yeah, definitely install it. But anyway, so the whole thing is that people are expecting Redfall to launch with performance mode because every game on modern consoles has been launching with performance mode. That's just what people have come to expect. And when people expect something and they don't get it, they're disappointed. It's like, it goes back to Machiavellian leadership descriptions, like in that book, The Prince, that we all read in high school. If somebody expects something and then they get it, they're not that thrilled. If somebody expects something and they don't get it, they're livid. However, if they don't expect something and they get it, they're all the more surprised and happy and thankful. And then also, if they don't expect something and they don't get it, they're not going to be that bummed because they didn't, no harm, no foul. And in this case, this is just a classic example of the broader gaming community and industry right now expects 60 FPS. They expect a performance mode. It's understood that the graphical settings will be, brought down a few notches, that there's going to be lower resolutions, there's going to be sacrifices made to get that 60 FPS. But that's the expectation people have. To confidently come out and just be like, yeah, well, we're going to do 30 FPS on everything, and then we'll do a performance mode later. I mean, it's just a bad look. It's just a bad look. And like I said, some of the best games in history, like full stop, have been 30 FPS. Let me be very clear. Like Red Dead 2 launched at 30 FPS. Breath of the Wild, 30 FPS. Like some of the best games I've ever played were 30 FPS. However, those games were in the last console generation. Those games were years and years ago. Now, the expectation is that they run at higher frame rates. That's just what people expect. So, it's an oopsie. And it doesn't change the fact that the perception now is that they can't get this thing optimized enough to run at 60, which concerns a lot of people. And what Carrick was saying is that based on the stuff he was seeing, the footage and other stuff they've shown off, it didn't look like this was a super well optimized game, and it looks like this is yet another confirmation of that, unfortunately. But what are you gonna do? Colin Moriarty mentioned in a podcast that a dev told him that the analytics show that some absurd amount of players choose to play on 30 FPS, which is crazy to me. That would be really, really interesting. If they actually shared that info, I would be super interested in hearing about that, because if it is the case that there's just a huge majority of players that prefer 30 because they like their games to look better, that'd be wild. I mean, I'll say for some games I prefer the 30 if I have to choose between 60 and 30, and the quality mode is that much better. I'm fine with that. Like even something like God of War Ragnarok, that was something where the combat and the controller scheme, honestly, it was there's enough delay in it, there's enough there that I didn't feel weird going to quality mode. Most of it I played in performance because I wanted to capture it in 60 for the critique, blah, blah, blah. But I thought quality mode was very, very playable and was pretty solid. However, that'd be really interesting if there are stats that show that. And it just turns out that the 60 FPS snobs are just really, really vocal on social media. You know, that'd be crazy. To be honest, 30 FPS didn't bother me a bit in The Last of Us 2 on PS4. Yeah, well, Sebi, like, for some games, the FPS don't bother me. For others, it really does. For a game like Ghost of Tsushima, I tried to play it at 30 FPS when it launched on like PS4 Pro, and I couldn't really get into it because the combat was so fast paced. It wasn't clicking with me. But the moment I was able to play that at 60 on the PS5, oh baby, I blasted through that game. It's one of my favorites. It's awesome. But my brain couldn't connect with it until I got that 60. So 30 FPS with motion blur makes me physically sick. It can, yeah. Well, when I went back to, speaking of The Last of Us Part 2, when I went back to The Last of Us Part 2 and tried playing at 30 on a PS4 Pro, after playing it at 60 on the PS5, man, I felt like it was bad. Yeah. Because, you know, you had tasted the forbidden fruit. You had seen what it was like on the other side. Yeah, first-person shooters don't work too hot at 30. And that's why, especially for a game like Redfall, the 60 FPS performance mode is kind of a necessary option. Just frankly, like, if you're trying to sell the game on having fast-paced shooter mechanics, you gotta come out with a performance mode, in my mind, for modern players. People just expect it. And then to not bring it is just a bad look. I wanted Redfall to be good too. It might be. A game can be great and run at 30 FPS. That's fine. It's very possible. But when people's expectations are that it's going to come with 60 and then they come with 30, people will be disappointed no matter what. Even if the game is amazing. Like if they announced that Half-Life 3 was coming, finally, but it's coming at 30 FPS, people would riot. It's still probably going to be one of the best games, like best shooters ever made. It's still going to be amazing, but it failed to live up to that expectation. This is why expectations are so crucial. Like, it's why people get on my case when I'm like, hey, let's keep expectations in check. Let's look at this skeptically and more rationally. People lose their minds because they like being excited. But the thing is, if you like freak out and like you're expecting X, Y, and Z, and they give you X and Y, but they don't give you Z, people will still be upset and feel like they were robbed or something was taken because their expectations got so out of whack. Alex was Half-Life 3. I mean, I guess if you want to be pedantic, it's like the third, but you could also say that like all of the expansions and stuff. When I say Half-Life 3, you know what I mean, okay? Don't be stupid. You know what I mean. Heaven forbid you're realistic about games these days. Exactly, Clarity. It's just, I don't know what it is. Going back to the Hogwarts Legacy thing, what somebody said, I think it was on a subreddit or something. Maybe it was on a comment section on like Retro's channel. It was something like that, where somebody commented, and it was right before the game's launch, right before all the reviews came out. And it was somebody that just in a moment of clarity and honesty said, listen, guys, even if Hogwarts Legacy sucks, I won't be sad that I was this hyped for it because I've had a great time being so excited, being so pumped for this thing. And that's a different mentality than I have. My brain does not work that way. I look at it and I'm like, well, if the game sucks, yeah, I'd be pissed that I spent months of my life like hyping it up and promoting it and getting excited over it and talking about it, thinking about it constantly. I'd be kind of pissed. But for some people, it's more about the ride, you know? It's they're there for the ride. Yeah, Undead Fish Cake. I was the same for Cyberpunk. Yeah, you got to take that copium. It's just, I understand it. I understand it. People like being excited. Everybody likes being excited for something. I enjoy the feeling of being excited for like a trip or going to like on vacation or something. The excitement often is just as much fun as the actual activity. But when the thing you're excited for ends up sucking, I wouldn't like excuse that. I'm like, well, you know, it's about the journey. Like, no, screw that. That sucked. My expectations were out of whack, so now I feel robbed. Like, especially the difference is when you could have known differently. And I think that's the crucial bit. For Hogwarts Legacy, there were signs and things to say like, okay, this is not going to be a perfect 10 out of 10 masterpiece. It's going to have some issues, and it's probably going to be a great 8 out of 10 game. Like a pretty good 8 out of 10 game. And because I went into the game expecting that, my expectations were in check, and I ended up having a really, really good time with it. However, a lot of people went in expecting it to be much more of a class simulator game or like a student simulation game, and so they were disappointed because you are basically a student for 5 hours and then you're just not. And, you know, so people had different expectations and it got out of whack. The whole thing with hype, I get it. People like being excited for stuff, but sometimes a little bit of chill doesn't hurt. People act like you're a hater, or you're just trying to piss people off or be a Debbie Downer or be negative. And you're like, no, I'm trying to help you, weirdly enough. For Cyberpunk 2077, this is what I was going to say before I spaced it. For Cyberpunk 2077, the difference between that and something like Hogwarts Legacy, or something like, I don't know, what was another game that like really disappointed people? Resident Evil 3 remake. Yeah, that's true. It's just super, super short. Avengers, Anthem, Saints Row. Was anybody excited for Saints Row though? Like, I don't know a single person that was excited for it. Forspoken, same thing. I think everybody knew that was, well, I mean, we could even go Gotham Knights. Yeah, we could go with Gotham Knights. So like Gotham Knights, there were a lot of warning signs with Gotham Knights. The cringy dialogue that they were writing, the weird stuttering and performance issues that they even showed in gameplay they were revealing before the game launched. So it's like, okay, there's concerning stuff here. There's weird stuff. The lighting engine looked weird. The combat looked kind of weird. There were all these problems that were clearly visible. So if somebody went into that game expecting it to be Game of the Year and expecting it to be amazing, I have very little sympathy for them, because the warning signs were there. If you were looking at it critically, you could have seen all of those warning signs. The difference between that and something like Cyberpunk 2077 is that Cyberpunk, they did a very good job of hiding the issues. And it was, in my mind, it was very deceptive, which is why I haven't just rolled over and forgiven them for it. Because a game can like launch broken, and then if they patch it, to me, in my mind, and tell me if I'm crazy, I want to hear your thoughts on this in chat, but in my mind, if they launch a broken product and then fix it over the next few months to where it should have been on launch day, maybe with a couple of extra little bonuses and perks in there, in my mind, that doesn't forgive what they did. I'm not back to square one. Like, I'm not back to just where I was before. Oh, well, they fixed it, so we're good. No, because they sold me a broken pile of garbage. They knew it was a broken pile of garbage, and they didn't care. And they still sold it to me anyways, hand-waving it away and saying, oh, we'll fix it later. And to me, that's not okay. It's just not okay. It's like if a car dealership sells you a car that's a broken pile of garbage, and then when you bring it back and throw a fit, they finally say, fine, we'll fix it. And after weeks and weeks of work, it's fixed. Am I going to recommend that car dealership to somebody? No. Am I going to go back to that car dealership for my next car? No. It's going to take a hell of a lot more than just getting it to where it should have been to win me back over. And in the case of Cyberpunk, that was something where they intentionally, I would say, sold me the broken car. They knew it was broken, which is why they sent it to only select reviewers. They made it so reviewers could only share B-roll. They couldn't even share their own gameplay. They did all of this knowing that it was broken, and they didn't care. And to this day, I mean, apparently they've sold over 20 million copies of Cyberpunk, and that class action lawsuit, I just saw this before we started streaming, that class action lawsuit filed against CDPR over this whole thing, they settled for like $1.85 million. $1.85 million. Now, if we do some big brain math here, okay? Big brain math. $1.85 million. And bear in mind, there are like lawyers' fees and stuff built into this, but $1.85 million. And we go and we just divide that by $60. How many copies of Cyberpunk did they need to sell? And I know that there's like the Steam cut of the sale, and there's PlayStation fees and Xbox fees for listing, but just like, let's make it super simple. If we divide that by 60, how many copies does it take to make that up? 30,000. Now, I'm not a genius, but if I take 20 million and I subtract 30,833.33, that still leaves a lot of money. This did not hurt them at all. So I don't think that Cyberpunk was that big of a hit to CDPR. Yeah, the bad press was an oopsie. Yeah, their stock price took a bit of a hit, but it started to recover pretty quickly, and people have like moved on. And now what you see with the Overdrive stuff and all of the things that they're doing now, all of that makes it pretty clear that the broader gaming public is ready to just kind of whatever and move on. And this is something I've debated with a lot of other YouTubers about, to be clear. So this is something like I get in fights with other YouTubers and streamers on pretty frequently, where some people like Maddie, I've said this with Maddie and Bethesda. Maddie is willing to give BGS the benefit of the doubt because they've done a lot of work to try and fix Fallout 76. So when he looks at Starfield, he is fine with still getting excited and hyped because he thinks that they've done a lot of work to try and win people back. For me, I do not give them any sort of benefit of the doubt. For me, I look at that and I go, nope, you're going to have to do a heck of a lot more to win me back over. Because what they did for Fallout 76 was like actually criminal as far as I'm concerned. Like it was, I think what they did was bad enough that there should have been like serious investigations. Every facet of that game is a disaster, but that's just me. It's my opinion. So I'm not willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. And same thing with Cyberpunk and CDPR. One of my favorite devs made my favorite game ever, The Witcher 3. I love the devs at CDPR, but the management scammed you. Like, this is what I don't get. Like, people are like, well, no, it's fine. They gave me some DLC and they brought native path tracing, so we're good. I'm like, guys, they basically tried to steal your money. They sold you a broken pile of garbage and tried to hide it from you. Why are you just okay with that? You should be more upset than me. You should be livid. Because at least, like, I do this for a living, so I can at least write off as an expense of the business the money I spent on the game. But you can't. Unless you're also like a YouTuber and streamer. But like you don't have that built in, like, oh, well, it's not that bad because I got content out of it. No, like they just straight up, they knew they were going to take your money for something that wasn't ready. And they didn't care. You should be pissed. You should be really pissed. He took my thing. Red flag, red flag.
16 times the detail.